Looming over the entire crisis, the status of 150 or so hostages currently being held by Hamas. The Israeli military said in a statement today that it had, quote, conducted raids to search for hostages. President Joe Biden today said he spoke to family members of some of the hostages while also reiterating his strong support for Israel.
We're making sure Israel has what it needs to defend itself and respond to these attacks. It's also a priority for me to urgently address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. At my direction, our teams are working in the region, including communicating directly with the governments of Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and other Arab nations, and the United Nations to surge support and humanitarian consequences for Hamas attack to help Israel. You know, we can't lose sight of the fact that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians had nothing to do with Hamas and Hamas's appalling attacks, and they're suffering as a result as well. This morning, I spoke with the family members of all those Americans who are still unaccounted for on a Zoom call for about an hour and 10, 15 minutes. They're going through agony, not knowing what the status of their sons, daughters, husbands, wives, children are. You know, it's gut-wrenching. I assured them my personal commitment to do everything possible to return every missing American to their families.
In the region, both U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and U.S. Secretary of State Tony Blinken. Blinken was in Qatar today, where he took stock of the dire situation, a key U.S. ally responding to a devastating terror attack. More than 1 million people in Gaza currently in harm's way, with a terror group believed to be using civilians as their human shields. Listen to that.
As I said yesterday in Tel Aviv, Israel has the right, indeed it has the obligation, to defend its people and to try to ensure that Hamas can never repeat what it's done. We continue to discuss with Israel the importance of taking every possible precaution to avoid harming civilians. We recognize that many Palestinian families in Gaza are suffering through no fault of their own, and that Palestinian civilians have lost their lives. We mourn the loss of every innocent life, Israeli, Palestinian, Jew, Christian, Muslim, as well as civilians of every faith and every nationality who've been killed.
So we start the hour with NBC News correspondent Allison Barber on the Israeli-Gaza border. Allison, what are you seeing?
Hey, Nicole, earlier today we were watching the horizon in Gaza as it was just bombarded by Israeli airstrikes. You could see the orange glow as just hit after hit fell. Plumes of smoke would come and then it would settle and then it would start again. For the most part at the time, we weren't seeing a lot of rocket fire coming from Gaza into this direction. That quickly changed, and for a while there were a few different rockets that were fired overhead. Most of them appeared to be intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome. We moved a little bit further back after we were told by the Israeli military that we needed to do that. They were moving more equipment in, and things were getting more active, and they wanted us to be out of that area for our own safety. Everything is indicating that this situation is escalating and that it will continue to escalate. I was speaking with a spokesperson with the IDF yesterday, and I asked him, is it fair when people are characterizing the ground assault into Gaza as imminent? He said, we have been very clear on our intent. Their intent is to ensure, he said, nothing like what happened on Saturday ever happens again. And they believe they do that by making sure that Hamas has no sort of power, be that governing within Gaza, be that existing within Gaza, be that able to conduct or operate any sort of military-like operations. They want to ensure that all of that is done and get the hostages that are still inside of Gaza out. There's that factor, but then you also have a lot of civilians, as you were discussing, inside of Gaza with really nowhere to go. And I asked that IDF spokesperson about the possibility of some sort of humanitarian corridor or some sort of green zone to allow civilians to get out. He said that the crossing on the north, Erez crossing, that is not open and not operating because Hamas struck it with missiles when they launched their assaults this weekend. He said they killed a number of people at that crossing, took people hostages, that is why it's no longer operating. I asked about the possibility of working with Egypt or opening some other exit in the entire area that goes on Israeli territory down to Egypt. He said that they couldn't discuss their diplomatic relations, but he went on to talk about Hamas and to say they have controlled that area for over a decade. He says that they have started this. Israel plans to finish it. And he said that Hamas is responsible for their citizens and that while Israel tries to mitigate civilian casualty, that ultimately Hamas started this. Hamas is responsible for the Palestinians inside of Gaza and that Israel plans to, quote unquote, finish this. All that being said, it is not true that it is just on one party to protect the lives of civilians. Based on the Geneva Conventions, that is an obligation of all warring parties to limit as much as possible the toll that wars take on civilians. And right now we know in the northern part of Gaza, about 1.1 million Palestinians have told they need to evacuate within the next 24 hours, whenever that timeline started. But at the same time, we also have learned from IDF this evening that in the last 24 hours, some of their troops have launched counter efforts in Gaza to, they said, focus on some targeted terror cells with Hamas militants within that. All of this, though, is still a very fluid situation. It appears to be developing rapidly and only escalating from here. And the truth with every war, Nicole, is that the people who are often impacted the most are the ones who had nothing to do with starting it. It is often civilians. It is often children. It is often people who did not have a say one way or the other. Nicole?
Your reporting intersects almost exactly with what U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin had to say today on the ground there, not far from where you are. Let me play some of his comments on exactly this, how Israeli forces in his 41 years in the military avoid what you're talking about, civilian deaths.
And I've worked with Israeli forces over the years, over many years. As you know, I wore a uniform for 41 years. My experience in working with the Israeli forces is they are professional, they're disciplined, and they're focused on the right things. And so I expect that going forward, they will continue to exhibit that same degree of professionalism that we've seen in the past. But you know, Matt, we've seen this before. The international community fought ISIS, who in some cases was embedded deeply in built-up areas. And that international coalition fought valiantly and protected civilians and created corridors for humanitarian movement, even in the midst of a pretty significant fight. So again, this is a professional force. It is well led, and I have every expectation that it will be disciplined.
Allison, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken delivered a similar message in Israel yesterday, saying that it is Hamas who uses civilians as targets. They hide their weapons. They hide themselves among the civilian populations. Any sense that there have been real concerns about we are all sifting through a whole lot of propaganda in our efforts to put together accurate information from the region. Right. This seems like a coordinated message. President Joe Biden also said, compared to al-Qaeda, he compared the slaughter of the Israelis on Saturday, saying it was worse than what al-Qaeda did, invoking ISIS, invoking al-Qaeda, and describing Hamas seems to be very much part of the sort of community of nations public messaging.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, we heard very quickly when all of this started, Israel talking about this, comparing it to the United States, what happened on 9/11. That probably is a conscious language choice as they're talking about the importance of humanitarian corridors. I'll remind viewers, those have not been established yet. All of this started on Saturday. It is Friday now. There are no humanitarian corridors for civilians out of Gaza. There's no sort of green zone. There's been no sort of agreement to create some sort of gap or time frame for civilians to be able to leave. Hamas has not released the children, all of them that they're believed to have in captivity, some of them incredibly young children. That's something that has been the utmost focus of Israelis that we talk to is they say that some of them that we have spoken to, they will identify differently politically, right? Someone told me a couple of days ago they identify as a leftist. They believe in a two-state solution, politics, all that sort of stuff. They identify politically here to the left. But they said they thought that a ground assault was necessary because of the fact that so many civilians, all civilians primarily, were targeted so aggressively this weekend, and that the only response could be to go in forcefully and get them out. And that person said, unfortunately, because of the density in Gaza, we know there may be civilian casualties, but because of what happened here, this then needs to happen there. Again, we're talking about civilians on all sides, and I'm thankful I'm not the one that ever has to make a decision on how that gets done. I can just tell you what I see and how it impacts people. But when we're talking about the options of border crossings and saying getting people out, there is a crossing that leaves via the border with Egypt. The Rafah crossing, that crossing is not open, and Egypt has said that is because Israeli airstrikes damaged it in the last couple of days, and they haven't been able to go in and get to it to make repairs necessary to allow people out. But even before that, it was not allowing anyone out for an emergency reason. It was only periodically allowing people out who already had pre-approval to cross that border. So there's so many politics here, and it's a very complicated situation, and there are decades, century plus, things going back to make this as complicated as it is right now. But base level, in this war, you have civilians on both sides that are dying and losing their lives. And that goes for Israeli, that goes for Palestinians. And there is not a solution with what's happening right now, as Israel seems to be on the verge of moving in any minute into Gaza to try and help get Palestinian people out of that area. The UN is sheltering people in their schools and in hospitals that they have there, but there is not any sort of humanitarian safe zone to help people get out in this part, in the southern part of Israel, but north of where Gaza is. IDF has been through most of these neighborhoods. We were in one earlier today, and they're almost entirely evacuated. As far as we know, the same thing is not happening for Palestinians. Hamas is not doing that for Palestinians within the Gaza territory. Nicole.